Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about the hearing before the New York court that is overseeing the criminal indictment, first in our history, by New York DA Alvin Bragg against Trump. There was a hearing today, and the judge ordered Trump to appear. And the reason he did was to make certain that Trump was aware of his responsibilities under a protective order. That, in and of itself, is extraordinary. You wouldn't normally bring a defendant to the carpet and say, now, have you read this? Do you know what it's about, etc.? And he's doing it because it's pretty clear he already doesn't trust Trump, Trump, that after he was indicted, fanned the flames saying, it's a judge who's against him and the judge's family is against him, etc. And the judge wants to be sure that the jury pool isn't polluted and that that Trump doesn't rev up supporters to actually make trouble as the trial goes forward. So what Justice, that's the name of judges at the trial level in New York, Merchant, said, Trump was there by Zoom from Mar-a-Lago, and he's now been given all this discovery, supposedly millions of pages. But it's only in order to prepare his defense, not to use to rev up supporters on the campaign trail. So there's a protective order that Merchant entered saying you may not use these for other purposes, and kind of, treating him like a child, which he is, infantilizing him. He said, it also says that Trump can't even look at the documents without being in the presence of his lawyers. So that both, puts him in short pants, as it were, and also puts responsibility on the lawyers not to let Trump exploit this. Now, Trump said, and his lawyer said, look, I've got a campaign to run. Well, his lawyer said it. Trump, actually, let me add this because it's one of the most sort of interesting parts of today. Trump sat there basically glowering and completely incensed. This is, in a sense, his most nose-to-nose encounter with the criminal justice system to date, even more than the indictment, because it was the judge just looking down at him and saying, Mr. Trump, this is my order. If you violate it, I can do a lot of things, including, and he used this threat, criminal contempt. What does that mean? The pokey. So that's really, throwing down the gauntlet. Maybe Trump just violates it and plays chicken with them. But if he does it too often and too brazenly, the judge almost is left with no choice but to put him in jail for a short sentence. And just imagine Donald Trump spending a night in jail, or much less a week, etc. Okay, so at the hearing, the judge said, I want to be sure that Trump knows what's in this order. And in response to the valid point, hey, I've got a campaign to run, the judge said, look, this isn't a gag order. You've got now all this information. You have it for one reason and one reason only. That's to make, your defense. So that it's not for you to use on the campaign trail. So this isn't in general muzzling of you. Presumably he can still go and insult the process and the judge, and still will. But it does mean that if any of the information that's in the discovery that's been turned over to him somehow shows up in the campaign or in public, he could be really hurting. I don't think now Merchant, the justice, didn't come at him, with a total stern, banging of the gavel. He's got to be careful, and he knows he's got to be careful. He really has to make a record, give Trump, former president of the United States, some running room, and, only when there's no choice left, potentially put him in jail, which would be immediately appealed. So he didn't give him this stern lecture, but he made it clear who's boss, and it ain't Donald Trump. He also, to Trump's great chagrin, said, we're going to trial. It's a firm date, and it's next, I believe, May 25th. It might be March 25th, but it's in the middle of the campaign season. And Trump, at this point, on mute in Zoom, assume, actually did this, gave a whole glowering gesticulation. And, came out after and said he's going to do this in the middle of the campaign. And, it looks like he is. And it's a whole complicated thing that we'll be looking at, whether a defendant doesn't have to be there for criminal trial, but it ain't like the civil trial. Generally it's taken for granted the defendant would be there and to exercise constitutional rights, for instance, of confrontation, and to decide his case, needs to be there. Can't just drop in when he feels like it. So making that clear was the other big point. That may or may not hold. Trump's going to do everything he can to delay things, to move things to federal court. And if he has very valid claims that a court of appeals wants to hear and think about, maybe he successfully is able to stall. But at least as of now, Merchant is telling him it's clear, it's firm, it's staying there. Oh, and by the way, don't even think about violating my protective order. He did emphasize that for what you need to do with all this discovery, because I have remedies. It's in my court, and they include, and he said, criminal contempt, thereby raising the specter that was lost on nobody of Donald Trump in the clink. Okay, the next date here that they need to show up isn't until January, because there's now going to come a whole series of motions, including Trump's, manifold efforts to try to get this moved. But he'll have to be back in January when the court will decide all the defense motions, including, no doubt, a motion to dismiss the whole case. And at that point, that leaves plenty of time on Merchant's schedule to then go to trial in the spring, and unless Trump is able to successfully get a court of appeals to actually move it or delay it or the like. So that's what's coming next. There won't be another one soon, unless, that is, Trump violates the protective order, and then we'll see him called to the carpet, and Merchant raising the temperature, if not pulling the final trigger. But, so clear today that this, what does Trump hate more than anything? Not being the boss. And he was not the boss. The justice system was the boss. Accountability was the boss. The rule of law was the boss. And it was a, somewhat satisfying thing to see for that reason. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.